And joining us virtually, because this is a digital session, first up we have Raman Mehta, Senior Vice President and Chief Information Officer at Johnson Electric, an important tier supplier. He's responsible for the digital transformation and acceleration of the company's Industry 4.0 journey. Raman, welcome. I'd also like to welcome on stage, next up, Ananth Ranganathan, Senior Manager, Supply Chain Management, Systems and Strategy at Nissan North America, responsible for IT systems, digital strategies, and analysis for Nissan supply chain management, including inbound, outbound, and cross-functionality with manufacturing and other departments. Ananth, please welcome to the stage. We also have on our panel, please take a seat, Wiebe Helder, CEO and founder of Cargobase, an independent logistics technology company specializing in transportation software management, supporting Fortune 500 companies across 50 companies. Wiebe, welcome. And last but certainly not least, we have John Perkovich, Chief Operating Officer at RPM, a global logistics company specializing in finished vehicle and freight transportation. John, please come on up. Welcome, everybody, and thanks for your attention. Raman, I'm going to tune into you since you're, before you go to bed, because you're in Hong Kong right now. So, Raman, as a CIO, your remit goes beyond supporting supply chain and logistics operations. But have you seen a shift in terms of the amount of time and resource that you and your team are dedicating to supporting supply chain logistics operations?
Hey, Richard, good morning. You can hear me?
Absolutely, loud and clear.
Wonderful. Great to be here from Hong Kong, and a very warm welcome to all the participants. This is a great event. So before I go into the resource allocation, I think you really hit the nail on the head. The supply chain discussions have become front and center for the CEO and the board level. You know, with the triple whammy of the pandemic, the semiconductor shortage, and the containers, going just haywire. And on top of that, you add the fourth leg of the table, that I call it, the great resignation, where you can't find workers in your factories. So, all of these things kind of came to us like a tsunami. And with a lot of underinvestment over the years, it just became a balance sheet issue. I mean, the income statements are getting impacted by the amount of money people have to put into air freights, expedites, losing sales. So what we've done at Johnson, which is no different than most of the other companies, the companies that have grown through acquisitions, we have a very fragmented portfolio where, you have, you name it, and you have that ERP. So today, what I want to give during this 1 hour, when we discuss in this panel, give a few practical insights as to how we made this journey where IT is kind of working on the digital solutions and really not telling the business that come and see me after 1 year. They are hurting right now. So we are trying to create some of the tools that are bringing more analytics into decision making. We are trying to empower our planners so they have a very holistic view of the entire supply chain, rather than being very, very siloed, where the demand generation people are looking from their own prism. You've got manufacturing, procurement, and we just can't afford the sequential planning. So we are very big on concurrent planning, and we are looking at some of these cloud tools that can take a lot of this data, crunch it, but the real problem comes because of the fragmentation. Your data is of very poor quality. So what are we doing about improving the bill of materials, looking at the commodity mappings? So all of these are real challenges, and we are kind of going in multiple dimensions. So as we go along, I will actually share a few more details.
Yeah, that's perfect, Raman. Thank you. I think it sets up a number of the conversations, questions, and discussions that will follow. So a perfect way to line up. Wiebe, I want to come to you. We're seeing a shift, well, I mentioned it in my opening, we're seeing a shift in terms of attitudes towards digitalisation, but that's from my perspective at Automotive Logistics. What are you seeing on the ground with your customers, with the wider network? How are those conversations changing?
I think it's changing a lot compared to, when I started with Cargobase 10 years ago, it was a lot of, I wouldn't say dinosaurs that were not really ready for or willing to digitalize and look at newer solutions, very old-fashioned mindset. And I think now there's a lot of newer, younger generation, strawberries or millennials that are very keen to explore new opportunities in a much more way that they want to get things done as soon as possible, and they want to see results within a month's time and not 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the line. Of course, they still want to see results long term as well, but short term is actually where they can impress their management with, etc. Right? Also, with people are not staying within the same job anymore for 25 years. They change every 2 to 3 years, right? So if you want to get things done and you want to learn and you want to change things, you need to change things fast. So I think that's definitely what we're seeing among a lot of companies, but I think there are still a lot of difficulties within what people want and what people need. And that's especially with digital solutions is if you, what people want might actually complicate the implementation times, etc., and also especially the user experience. Because you have management that wants to have control, visibility, and cost savings, but operational people just want to get stuff done. So how can you make it as easy as possible for them? And that's what we stand for, and with our no-nonsense approach, we like to spend time in plans and actually see, okay, what do these people actually want? And there might actually be a massive disconnect with what the management actually in the headquarters believe that they want.
Yeah, absolutely, different expectations, even internally, and now perhaps that's a great time to bring you in. You've been leading your Nissan's supply chain digitalization journey over the past 5 years or so. Can you maybe just start by sharing some of that experience, what that roadmap has been like, and kind of what direction you're heading?
Yeah, sure. I think it's a good question, because when you look at our supply chain journey, right, the way we've actually trying to transform is like, how do we react to the agile culture of innovation? How do we ensure we're teaming up or skilling up a labor pool? Because when you see the labor force coming in, no one wants to use Excel-based and things of that nature. So what Wiebe was saying, in terms of how do you get out of the dinosaurs and really try to ensure you're giving the tools of the digital world. So what we've really done is we've really narrowed down to 4 key areas just in our supply chain transformation journey. Starting with the data platform, which is but the key is how do we ensure we have the single pane truth. When you look at supply chain, right, you have a lot of transportation partners, you have a lot of touch points. How do you ensure you integrate all the data into a single data pool? And then once you have this data pool, and then you can actually start looking at how do you ensure you're skilling up your people. So that's really our second journey, is skilling up our people, a labor pool, to ensure they understand how to utilize the various fancy words, I would say ML, AI, all those fancy terms, right? But before you get there, how do you ensure you have your data structure, and then you have your skill in the labor force, and then ultimately, how do you ensure you're measuring the data, right? Because that's the bottom line of all the activity that we're doing, is how do we ensure we measure it? So when you look at the transformation of Nissan over the last 5 years, right? So we've really taken a strategic approach of, okay, let's not try to have a siloed system base, because when you look at our supply chain, when you look at our plants, it's pretty complex. So how do we ensure we actually have a common system, a common workflow? That way, it's actually transferable. I can give you an example, almost like a Windows OS, right? When you log into your laptop, it's pretty much the same. You have a standard icon there. You know exactly how to go to your My Computer. You know how to go to your recycle bin, right? So what we are really trying to do is how do we ensure we have these standardized pane of glasses, so that anyone in Mexico or Smyrna or Canton, any of the facilities, we can actually try to use their skill set and ensure we have one system rather than having multiple solutions. So I think the journey is still progressing. So we've embarked some technologies. We're actually in the middle of implementing some solutions. And the way I see this is it's actually continuing to journey or continuing to progress. Especially when I look at 3-4 years back, we had a team of 5 people, and that's now grown to 14, right? So the main goal is how do we ensure we grow organically and ensure it's really sustainable from a transformation standpoint.
Yeah, excellent. And again, plenty of points that I'll pick you up on or pick into later with some examples as well. John, welcome. Joined RPM in 2021. These last few years, joining any company and embarking on digital transformation, leading the operations is no mean feat. Compared to your experience with previous roles in freight management and the companies you've been at, how different is the attitude and what's the key drivers behind RPM own digital advancement?
Sure. I think that we've got our finger on the pulse. We're focused on our people and our processes. We believe that poorly trained employees and bad processes are going to kill any project. And the technology is the easy part, but without the people and the processes, it's just not going to work. I don't think it's a coincidence yesterday during the conversation around logistics of resiliency, there's a heavy focus on data. Siloed data will erode profits. It will crush an organization. And the processes of yesterday are not working. They're outdated, and we need to continue to focus on how do we remove the non-generating or the non-revenue generating tasks from our organization and have those be served with technology, automation, digital platforms to free up our people's time to work on more value-added activities, build better relationships, and that's what we're focused on.
Yeah, excellent. And it's interesting, we talk about digitalisation, but already talent and the skill and the labour has been an important theme so far. And now, coming back to you, just wanting to delve a little bit deeper into some of your experiences and some of the projects where you've seen some real success at Nissan, be it on the inbound or outbound side. Has there been the low-hanging fruit, as we like to term it in the industry, where you've seen some real gains so far?
Yeah, it's interesting because there's always low-hanging fruit, in my opinion, when you actually embark on a journey, right? So what we've actually done is we've broken into three key areas. One is focus on massive systems your WMS, TMS, YMS, all those kind of massive systems, which really isn't a low-hanging. It's more of trying to look at the future, trying to ensure you have a solid strategy in terms of what you're trying to do, why you're trying to do. And then you have workflow apps, which again, I would prefer that as some of our low-hanging fruits, which is nothing but how do you standardize some of our processes, right? I mean, when you look at even at an OEM level, right, when we have to reach out to suppliers, we still rely on business cards. We still rely on contacts in our phone list, right? And if I'm new to the industry, I'm okay, can you please pass down the information, or can you please send me an email, right? So one of the low-hanging fruit that we've really tried to attack is how do we ensure we have a supplier database, right, which is actually accessible to across the supply chain, so that as new OEM or carriers, as new freight forwarders get added, we have all their contacts, everything in the master database. That way, it actually helps anyone to actually just log in and actually do it. And the vision over there is ultimately how do we make it external facing, because it's just not at Nissan. We want to actually see our vendors, right? Also the vendors want to see who at Nissan am I talking to, right? So I think some of those low-hanging fruits are there, but again, it's key, what John was mentioning, how do you ensure you have the data, you have the visibility, and that's where integrating that is the key, right? So the low-hanging, I mean, it's always there, but it's more how do you ensure you have a strategy around it, and what's your ultimate goal and vision trying to actually achieve? That would be key.
Yeah, excellent. And Raman, I want to come back to you as well. You're obviously embarking on this mid-length transformation journey that's going to take some time, but we've already talked about a need for immediate impact and change to happen quickly. So how are you balancing the long-term strategy with the immediate kind of investments and operational gains? And again, if you have some examples that you can share that are helping along this roadmap.
Definitely. So the first thing is you have to get some early wins with your business. You really need to speak their language. You just cannot be the IT person. Understand their pain. And one thing I found from my experience, it all starts with clean demand management. As companies traditionally, it's been a kind of left aside world, especially in automotive. A lot of companies rely on IHS databases. Now, the way automotive industry is changing so fast, nobody thought the electrification will come with such a rapid pace. If you look at the new car sales, the electric platforms are just ballooning up. It is disrupting supply chains. So what we've done here is really applied some calibration to these demand signals that we are getting from different databases. Our own internal shipping to some customers gives us a very good barometer of the demand. And what we do, we digitize it so everybody can see it, and then we take it to the next step of what we call the SIOP planning, the sales inventory operations planning. Now, this is the key, and I think John made a very good point about it is just not about technology. It is about the process and people as well together. So once you put a process where a lot of people can contribute together and can really understand and make a commitment, what is the importance of having clean data? If you talk about machine learning, the fuel is the clean data there. So clean demand, which you can actually start to do some statistical analysis, that what you thought the demand would have been, and you track it and calibrate those machine learning models and feed into your engine. And then what happens is people actually underestimate that this is such a important tool to do your capacity planning. It actually becomes a very important element of your capex planning. When you are forecasting demand up to 12 to 18 months, and you look at your existing capacity, you look at the material availability, what is gating you, you can start to play those scenarios. So that was some of the things that putting it into a digital model, our operations people, our procurement people, they found that as a very efficient way to interact with each other. Now, instead of it being sequential, they all come into one system and play these scenarios. And when the demand is clean, all the good things happen. So I think we took that journey, and along the way, we started to empower our supply chain, our operational people with a lot of modern analytical tools. We kind of expanded the use of these Power BI kind of tools and make it very, very democratized. And those two things really in a short term gave us a big boost in our own capabilities and getting the buy-in from the business.
Yeah, excellent. And I think, listening to some of the conversations yesterday and being part of them with forward planning, people striving for visibility beyond 10 days, I'm sure if digitalisation can help project that much further out with scenario planning, scenario mapping, that's something that's going to make a real impact. So it could be a really valuable area to invest in for sure. I want to talk about balancing in-house and kind of off-the-shelf or bespoke tools. And Ananth, perhaps I'll come to you first on that. How are you finding that balance, and how are you prioritizing what you do in-house and what you build organically, as you said, versus how you bring in partners strategically and how you blend their services and their tools with your own?
Yeah. No, I think it's a very interesting problem, right? And I remember, 6 months back, I actually read a Wall Street Journal article that actually said that how, companies, especially their IT teams, they're actually trying to put more of these processes more on the business, right? So I think for us, what we have really done is we've taken a strategic approach of really finding out, what should we outsource versus what should be insourced, right? I mean, there's always pros and cons of doing both, right? So the way we've actually looked at is again, when you look at the digital strategy roadmap over the next 5 years, right? We see a lot of systems and ideas that are actually coming in, right? Be it drone scanning, be it ASRS, be it any of these technologies that everyone's trying to pursue, right? So one of the things that we really is near and dear for us is actually the cybersecurity and the risk associated with all these vendors and how the data is going to be interacting, right? So the way we've taken the approach is, okay, let the core competency of these vendors, let them have that. Whereas like what our competency from an in-house standpoint is going to be on the digital architecture, which is nothing but how do we ensure the cybersecurity risk is mitigated, how do we ensure the systems are safe, and how do we ensure like the updates are made in a timely manner, right? So what we've really done is we've really taken that architecture piece of it in-house by really creating these middlewares, because what I also see is like once we have like these, like I said, the WMS, the YMS, TMS, the end goal is how do we ensure everything communicates, right? And trying to create that architecture to ensure that it's all communicating, it's all like in synchrony. I think that piece of it is what we are really trying to take it in-house, whereas the external piece, which is nothing but the system related from the vendor standpoint, we just leave it outsourced, thereby like ensuring that we have that core competency of ensuring that we have a single pane. Again, goes back to the original comment, like how do we ensure we have a single pane of truth?
Interesting. Wiebe, I'm keen to get your perspective here as well as a provider. It's an interesting point about that security level. How are you ensuring, and how does your platform ensure that the safety of your customers' networks and can't be compromised, to not be compromised?
Okay, I'm the CEO, right, not the CTO, but I'm the logistics guy, not the tech guy. But I think for security, look, we help our customers in terms of their requirements, especially of course in Europe. There's more stricter regulations in regards to data processing, etc. But they're all like standardized ISO certifications and SOC 2 here in the US, which basically helps solve these issues and makes our lives a lot easier. But we still get, whenever we onboard a new customer, we get Excel files with security questions, which is not just 20 questions, but it's like 500 questions.
6 times.
Yeah, so it's very, of course, I think it's very, very serious. But there are modern tools with single sign-on and all these things that basically allow people to only access data that they're shoot. Within our platform, we believe that people should only have access and see information that's relevant to their job and authorization. So if somebody in a plant in Aguascalientes works on the operations side, they should only see what happens in Aguascalientes. They should should not see anything that happens in Asia or anywhere else in Mexico. So I think that's also, and also in regards to what can people share with people outside of the organization, and how can you limit that, and how can you control that, right? But I think that's also for security. I think it's also how people, in the end, logistics is all about collaboration, right? The collaboration between all the stakeholders. You have the planners, the engineers, you have sales, you have operations, you have logistics, you have compliance, you have finance. So there's a lot of data out there that everybody wants to have a part of the data. But if you keep it in a controlled environment, then it should be pretty solid.
Well, I want to know if there is that control there. But before I ask that question, John, I want to turn to you about data integrity. And as I understand it, third-party data is integral to your business model, matching customers' shipping needs with available capacity. So how do you ensure accurate, timely, and secure data coming through so that your network isn't compromised?
Yeah, so again, COO, not in technology, but I think for us it's an emphasis on integrating with the customer to ensure that the data is coming in accurately, and then we're working to work with carriers as digital as possible to make sure that we're passing that through correctly. We don't own any trucks, we're not asset based, so our job really is to pass through the information correctly and then pass it back to the customer. And the focus is to be 100% accurate on that at all times to reduce the amount of deviations from the process.
And with that data sharing, which is integral, the talk is we need to do it faster, quicker, real-time sharing of data. And my question to the panel is the digital automotive supply chain ecosystem robust enough and reliable enough? Are we there yet in a place where we can reliably and be confident in information sharing within the parameters to ensure that the right people are getting the right information at the right time? And Raman, perhaps I'll come to you first on that.
Definitely. So before I jump into that question, let me kind of throw one more dimension. When I talk about long-term roadmap, we're looking into 18 months. We really want to start upfront from our engineering product design. We want to emphasize on platform thinking. really simplify our products so our supply chain and manufacturing becomes simplified as well. That's our long-term vision. Why should we look at 20 different families of MOSFET semiconductors? Can we simplify it? And that's a lot of work together, getting digital in our engineering organization, so they are wired up and they know exactly the products that they are designing are designed for automation, designed for manufacturing on the manufacturing floor, and are sustainable. So we are putting a lot of effort in that area. What that does is it opens up the collaboration within the enterprise. And now, coming to your question, we are taking it to the next step where we want to work on both ends. On one side with our customers, who are some of the large OEs and tier ones, and really get their demand signals, long range forecast into a digital format. And we do a lot of waterfall analysis on that and share that back with the OEM that, well, in the 10th week, you said you would be needing 10,000 motors, but suddenly a week before, 2 weeks before, you drop the demand. How do we account for that? How do we absorb that shock? And then once they start to see the data, the collaboration really improves. And that gives our planners a what if scenario. If there's a hot demand coming in at the last minute, which factory is most equipped to make it? Where do I protect my customer service levels, my profitability? Some of these discussions were not even on their mind. They did not have the tools. Now, everything being in the concurrent planning, with a push of a button, I can do these scenarios where people from different departments can come together and say, yeah, this makes the most optimized sense for Johnson. And now let's make it closed loop and execute on our supply chain and our factory floors. And the same behavior, now we want to take it on to our suppliers. And we're starting with some of the large suppliers who are digital savvy and kind of creating a digital twin of our supply chain. And it's a big effort, but I am absolutely convinced our board, our CEO, our leadership is completely behind these initiatives. They believe that it can improve our customer service, improve our profitability, and our reaction time, truly in business terms, an agile supply chain. A lot of work, but you got to start small, build some credibility, show some early wins, and then the big games really starts.
Yeah, I think if I can just add on to what Raman was saying, right? I think that's like the ideal end state goal, right? But I think to your question, like, are we there? Is the supply chain robust? At least from an automotive standpoint, what I see, I definitely see gaps, just in terms of how that has been built, right? The intent from the leadership is there to eventually, like, we have this seamless integration. But I think when you look at the challenges, right? I mean, you still have people with the mindset of it's my data, and I don't want to share it, right? I still see that, right? And I would say, like, maybe like at a tier 1 level, like, we are much better in terms of getting some openness, trying to work with our top suppliers and things of that nature. But when you start expanding it, like, to tier 2, tier 3, tier 4s, and especially, like, again, you can rely on pestle information, but again, it all depends on like how good the pestle information is, right? So maybe countries like US, Europe, I can see, like, the pestle information being good, but when you look at, like, some of the countries in the Far East, the pestle is actually, like, more coordinated, right? So then how do you rely on the accuracy of the data, the integrity of the data, right? So again, I definitely applaud, like, what Raman is saying. I think like that's like the ideal end state goal, but to me, like, where I see just from an automotive standpoint, I definitely see, like, the ecosystem needs to be evolved, and it's almost like how do we develop a governance around it to ensure, like, everyone can participate and ensure, like, the data is there available.
Yeah, excellent. I want to focus a little bit on the human side. So when it comes to data, there's clear logic, but when it comes to human, sometimes there's no logic. I knew I had to be up early this morning, and yet I still stayed at the bar for just one more last night. But integration of systems, new projects, new tools, it might make logical sense. The investment might be there. There might be backing from certain leaders within the company or certain individuals to help them with their own operations. But at a human level, is resistance to change equally as challenging as perhaps the technical view? Open to the panel.
Yeah, maybe I can just start. Like, I'll give you guys a good example. Like, I remember like a year back, we were trying to implement a yard management solution in one of our facilities, and the first resistance that actually came up from one of our operators is the system is too complex. And I was like, why? The reason was because he used to use radios, and now he has to use a tablet where he has to press 2 buttons. And he's like, I prefer the radios because it's easier and it's much more efficient. And the guy was arguing with us in terms of like how radios are efficient and how he has a flip phone in terms of like, the technology and how potentially like, getting these systems is going to replace his job, right? So I think it's more of communication, right? One of the approaches I really strongly believe in is like, how do you actually communicate the reason for the system implementation or the reason for the change, right? And that's one of the key success factors we've seen is when you're actually open, when you're transparent, and when you communicate with the end users, right? They're much adaptive to like, the changes, right? And that's how we've actually taken the approach from that standpoint.
Yeah, we're seeing, when we started 10 years ago, we saw massive resistance in changing, especially on the operational side, right? Nobody likes to change. The operational people definitely don't like to change. But what we really try to do is to really understand what their needs were and actually give them a user. They think like, okay, email is very efficient, but if you copy in, 10 to 20 people in CC, which seems to be sometimes the norm in logistics, then that's not actually efficient because you waste a lot of people's time, people's inboxes are filling up, etc. But now actually, so I had a meeting 3 weeks ago with the tier 2, and I was the oldest one at the table, and they were all like, yeah, we are not afraid that the technology is gonna make our job go away. It's basically, it allows us to actually do our job, because currently we're just doing things we actually don't want to do. We actually want to work more efficient and in a better way. And that's also, so what we've done especially with the automotive, with the tier 1s, is that we work with a land and expand model, where we create a pilot location, let's say one plant, where maybe somebody that is a bit more tech savvy and open to change, that becomes the champion, that becomes a success story, and then we work from there to actually work with other plants. Because if you have a success story and it works already at one location, then it's much easier to actually work from there. And then especially not on the integration side with everything, we don't collaborate, or we don't support any integration in the first 6 months, because processes keep on changing. Because if you do integrations, you have to evolve IT, and then you're 1 year, 2 years in. So basically keeping it as simple as possible from the start, so operations don't see it as a burden. They actually see it as, okay, let's just give it a try, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Then try something else, right?
Yeah. Yeah, just to add on to that, I think a good example for us is over the last decade, if you ask any trucking company, what do they want? They want access to more shipments. They want to see, what you have in your network, and then the release and the launch of a digital marketplace for carriers to go on and view shipments. The initial resistance was, I don't know about that. I don't know if I want to go online and view your shipments. I'd prefer it the old way. But over time, we've freed up our employees' time to really talk to the carriers, talk to the shippers about why this is better for everybody. So we've removed those monotonous tasks, if you will, to allow for them to coach and work with the trucking companies on why the visibility to the shipments online is a better experience for them. We've seen greater adoption when we've given our employees the time to work through it and not just try to force it down everybody's throat. And I think overall it's been a smashing success, because we've identified where our employees' time is better spent, which is dealing with humans, let humans work with humans, and create more value-added relationships from doing that.
And Richard, from my point of view, I think my learnings has been you got to address what's in it for you. As technology people, we go, what's in it for me? Why do I need a better system for cybersecurity, modern architecture? But we seldom take time in bringing the business benefits to them and connecting the dots. That's very important. Number 2, it is very important the message to come from top down as well. If your leadership team starts to insist that I want to go to a real dashboard, actionable insight, rather than looking at a PowerPoint and people saying, hey, let me get back to you. The moment they start to ask the question, demand the answers right there, I think that starts to flow down. So it's a both ways, but at the end, people have to see the value. I give an example, uh, we started on this journey, which is kind of very tightly connected with this supply chain optimization on Industry 4.0. So we have a lot of these programmable logic controllers that are connected to these machines. Now, if we can collect the data through those IoT sensors in real time and backflush what you made on end of line before packing the material and push that signal real time into the ERP system, so your demand and supply planning systems have the real time information without calling 5 people on the factory floor. When people see that, it makes their life easy. Typically, people spend 80% of their time in discovering information, different spreadsheets, pivot tables, and 20% analyzing it. We want to change this on its head, where you spend minimal time in discovering it's available to you, and you are spending more time doing value added work. And that's where the light bulbs go for me.
Yeah, excellent point. Thanks, Raman. I want to turn my attention to scale. So understanding the importance of the ability to scale, and when selecting, we're talking about investing wisely. Is scalability a prerequisite for any decision that goes through, or can smaller investments into projects that are perhaps fit for purpose, not necessarily with the ability to scale or intended to scale, can they also play a role? And again, how is that balance when in choosing to invest and select that project? And Ananth, I'll come to you first.
Sure. I think, again, when you look at our supply chain transformation journey, right, again, when I was talking about this, like, I think in the past what would happen is we would all go all in, right? Someone would have an idea and say, like, hey, I want to have this system, and then it's all in, like, it's just pushed down in terms of get this implemented, right? And what happens is people don't realize, like, everyone has their day jobs in addition to, like, supporting a new system implementation or a new system launch, right? So I think the way we've taken the approach is that we've also looked at what is proof of concept. Let's do small proof of concepts, right? Be it like, ultra wideband technologies, be it like, some of our TMS solutions, like, how do we ensure, like, we're finding like the business need, connecting the business need in terms of, is this solution going to deliver what we need, right? So we're trying to do like POCs and try to find out, like, is this a value that is actually going to add, just not in one location, but across all locations, right? And then try to ensure, like, from there, we try to figure out, like, how do we modify or how do we actually develop a scope of work for that? And that really, like, ensures that when you look at the scalability, like what you're saying, how do we ensure we have a system or a common system across all the regions, all the solutions, and it's purely scaled, right? So that's the approach that we've actually taken from a Nissan standpoint.
Yeah, and John, RPM expanding rapidly in multiple regions. So from your standpoint, in selecting that ability to scale, how crucial is that for you with your decision making?
Yeah, I think incremental gains, right, every day leads to a big reward. Like Ananth was saying, for us, again, it comes down to identifying the low-hanging fruit, understanding how the people need to be trained, what those processes are, and really understanding that throughout the entire organization allows for us to scale and really invest in the right digitization efforts that we're going to get the biggest ROI on overall. I think for us, we've digitized the delivery receipt. We've digitized the experience for the carrier, and we're continuing to focus on what's better suited for technology versus what's better suited for humans to handle, and that allows for us to scale. I think digitizing our organization gives us a deeper connection with data, which allows for us to move into things like automated tendering, autonomous procurement, and those tools give us the ability to invest in new people, new areas. We're not spending our money on just those same outdated processes overall. We're able to shift towards things that will provide more value for the organization long term.
Excellent. So I think we've got about 5 or so minutes to go. So if there is any questions in the audience, please don't hold back. But I'm rather enjoying myself, so I'm going to keep going right this second. Let's turn our attentions to the future. That always gets exciting. So a lot of this conference and conversations have been about mitigating the challenges, the complexities that we're facing right now. But looking ahead, what's the real scope and potential for digitalization, digital transformation? Raman, I'll come to you first. What's your vision moving forward, and what's the end goal?
Well, the end goal for us is really autonomous supply chains. And I say it with a lot of conviction. A lot of these things, if you have enough data and the rules built into your models, the system can tweak itself, can correct itself. And if you put a right exception-driven mindset, we want to be in a place where the entire organization becomes exception-driven. We set the threshold, and only when those things get exceeded in terms of our business values, we want to react. It is going to take a humongous effort in terms of, first of all, the data cleanups. I mean, we have a long journey where we are such a vertically integrated organization. We, in fact, make even our own tools and machines. So to live in that world where parts keep getting proliferated, the bombs have one factory supplying to another factory, how do I set up the ecosystem within my Johnson platform? That's one of our challenges. Second thing we want to do is really the human aspect, and we are so committed to it. We want to reduce the cost of experimentation. A bright kid who just out of college or an intern has a good idea, and he or she wants to iterate and kind of prove that concept. In fact, we've stopped calling them POCs now. We call them POVs, proof of value. How soon that person, without getting bogged down by an IT infrastructure or clean data, can prove a hypothesis. That's exactly what we want to do. So autonomous supply chain that's driven by exception, and an opportunity for people to do experimentations, and a fast track where those DevOps things can be made and implemented in a production model so the whole organization can benefit.
Well, that's quite an expansive vision, but fascinating as well. Ananth, from Nissan's perspective, what's the vision moving forward? And Raman talked about fully autonomous supply chain. Is that the goal? Is that realistic?
I think, is it going to happen? Definitely, but are we there, at least from an automotive standpoint, from an OEM standpoint? I see the challenges. And again, it goes back to what I was saying, if you look at individual point A to point B delivery, from a particular warehouse to the plant, I can see that happening, autonomous, right? But when you look at the entire end-to-end visibility, which is tier 1, tier 2, 3, all the way up to tier N, that seems more complicated, right? And I think it all depends on what's the governance structure over there, and how do we ensure we're all open in terms of sharing the data. I think that's the basic, the fundamental challenge that I see in order to ensure we get this autonomous supply chain. But definitely, I do see some improvements just in terms of where we were to what we are doing right now and what the journey is, right? But it's definitely a tough path ahead.
Excellent. And John, coming to you, how do you see RPM playing a role in this, in the full digitalization? Perhaps particularly picking on the finished vehicles sector. Sure. How do you see that transformation going? What role will you play, and how will digital technology continue to drive efficiencies in operations?
Yeah, Nissan is a customer of ours, and they expect us to be able to provide them with the most competitive prices possible, and we won't be able to do that if we don't automate the processes that can be automated. We need to be competitive. We need to be able to find more capacity. We need to be able to provide better quality, but that can't be done at a competitively priced scale without understanding where we could automate those processes. We're building tools. We've already built tools to help create a better experience for our customers and our employees. And we're going to continue to do that with our third-party logistics solutions. We're focusing on how do we have better order management, VIN bundling, co-loading is things that we're working towards, and that's our mission, is to be really the strategic leader in how to be more efficient with the outbound shipping of vehicles, as well as inbound freight too. But there's a lot of opportunity there where excess or waste is in the supply chain, and it's our job to be the thought leaders and the first movers with some of this stuff. I think that there is tremendous amount of value when you understand where the low-hanging fruit exists, and that's what we're focused on.
Yeah, excellent. And Wiebe, coming to you, what's next? What are you building? What are you excited about in this digital journey for the automotive supply chain?
No, we're building a solution. We build a solution that the customers actually want, right? So it's not the vision that I had 10 years ago is not what we currently offer. But the customers want an autonomous TMS, so we're started to build an autonomous TMS, but that can only happen if you collect the right data, and people actually start moving away from Excel sheets and actually putting the data in the system in an automated way or in a manual way, preferred automated. But and then the logistics itself, it's mostly rule-based. So there's a lot of things that actually can be automated, but it's just all currently done by humans, and it also starts where in the supply chain, right? So we are focusing a lot on helping tier ones, especially on the requests from freight and for logistics services are not originating from the logistics folks. It comes from the planners, the engineers, the sales, etc. Right? So how do you get their data immediately into the process and then basically automate and make the logistics operations itself autonomous? And then you're seeing currently already a lot of companies moving more towards control towers, in-house control towers, where actually you have already the collection of all the data, and basically they're processing everything manually. So if you actually automate that, then you're already a few steps ahead.
Yeah, excellent. So, well, that's it for our opening session. We've come to time. I think this could go on for a lot longer, but please do continue those conversations. So I want to say a big thank you to our panelists. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And before we let you go and recharge, refuel on your coffee, we are going to have a quick bonus session where we're going to continue our digital transformation, our own transformation, and look at what's coming next with some exciting innovations and presentations from some startups. So in order to do that, I want to invite Christopher Ludwig back onto the stage. And thank you very much.